Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Ayin Vav in Ksubas, as we learned from 4 Shlema 4. Yosef Shiur ben Chaim Michal and Elazar ben Reuma. Another reminder to do Pruthbul before the year is out. So we're up to about the end of the sixth line on Ayin Vav Manal. What was the discussion in the Mishnah? We'll see that the Rabbanan said in the Mishnah that if a woman has a obvious blemish and he marries her anyway, he can't have any complaint. Because he can't claim that he didn't know about it to make a toast. Even if there's a bathhouse in the city, he could have sent some relatives to check her out. However, if those things aren't the case, these are women, we're talking about blemishes which were hidden, that he could not tell, and then it turns out she had a blemish. So the Mishnah said, according to Rav Meir, it depends. If she's still in her father's house, she's just betrothed, he hasn't married her yet, then it's the father's obligation to bring proof that she didn't get the blemish until after the Erison. So it's the husband's tough luck, and he has to pay, pay the ksuba because it happened under his jurisdiction, the blemish. If it was in the husband's house, in other words, he only found out later on, that he has to bring proof that it happened before they got engaged, and it's her fault, and he doesn't have to pay the ksuba. So the Gemara first had a discussion. It seems to be the first part of the Mishnah seems to go like Rabbi Yoshua, who says that lo mipi anachayin. You look at the basar chazaka, the husband doesn't have to pay, no matter what, no matter where it was, whether she was still at home at her father's house or whether she was married. It's the husband doesn't have to pay lo mipi anachayin. On the other hand, the end of the Mishnah says that the husband has to bring proof. Goes like Rabbi Lezer, who we paskin, Rabbi Gamliel rather, Rabbi Gamliel, who we paskin that she's believed. Why? Because she has a chazak of a guf, meaning she wasn't born with the blemish. We're not talking about a blemish that was congenital. She was okay, and somehow she developed a blemish later on. Maybe, presumably, the presumption was that she was okay until that point, and therefore she has a cheskes haguf. So therefore, the first opinion of the Gemara was that the Mishnah, the first part of the Mishnah goes like Yeshua, the second part goes like Malil, and it really makes a difference where the blemishes were found upon her, whether she was in her father's house or her husband's house. The first part of the Mishnah goes like Yeshua, that says that the husband doesn't have to pay. It's upon the father to bring proof that the mum happened later on after they got engaged. And the second part of the Mishnah goes like Gamaliel says no, that it's on the husband to bring proof. Why? Because the chazak of a guf is much stronger than a chazak of mammon. Presumably we're talking the husband still has the money, he has to pay the ksuba. The girl has a cheskes haguf. And the Gemara went through that discussion. Then we had an opinion in the Gemara. Rava's opinion was no, that it all goes like a Gamaliel, like we pass like a Gamaliel, that we believe her. But the first part of the Mishnah says, look, if it was in her rishus, probably if she was still at her father's house, presumably the mum happened there. And if it was in the husband's house, presumably happened later on. And the Gemara went on to explain that there's two chazakas in the case of the cheskes haguf. If she's still at home, she has a if the husband brings proof. In other words, in both cases we say that it's upon the husband to bring the proof. But what's the issue over here? Kanim tzakan haya. So if it was in the father's rishus, so what does she have? Until she got engaged, we say she is a chazaka. That number one, Eidan Mafayis per moment, and number two, he would have checked. Well, and find someone that he wouldn't have accepted that, and the person wouldn't drink from a cup that unless he checked it. So that's a proof for her. But on the other hand, Mishnah Sarsa, if he only has proof that the mum happened afterwards. So number one, chazaka Adam Shasa because some kovka, so that's against him. On the other hand, there's a chazaka, he wouldn't have accepted it. But she also has a cheskes haguf, that she was okay until then. If the proof is that she had the mum before they got engaged, so she doesn't have a chazaka haguf at the time, the key is when they got engaged. That was we explained yesterday according to Rav. And now Rav Ashi on Ayin Vav Manaf on the sixth one, Rav Ashi Amar Reisha. The Reisha speaking of Manala Abiyach. I'll tell you the difference. Yes, it all goes like Rav says, it goes like from Malil. You don't have to say the Mishnah is talking about two different sheets. The first part is Rav Yeshua, and the second part is from Malil. The whole thing goes like Malil. But what? In the Reisha, Manala Abiyach, it's not as strong a claim as saying the money belongs to me. What happened? The Reisha was speaking about before, while she was still in her father's house. If she gets divorced at that point, who gets the ksuba? The father, because it's only Erison. If you're talking about if there is a ksuba b'chlal, it goes to the father. So here we're saying her claim is, who has a cheskes haguf? She has a chazak haguf, saying that the blemish didn't happen until now. She wasn't born that way. But her claim is, my father my father has some money. You owe my father money, but the father doesn't have the cheskes guf. She does. So Rav Ashi makes that fine difference and says the reisha mana la'aba b'yadcha. So therefore, her claim isn't so strong. Even though yes, we're going like the Malil, but her claim isn't that strong because the father's making the claim. Mana la'aba, my father is owed money from you, but I'm the one who has a cheskes guf. That's not as strong. Seifa mana libiyatcha, the seifa where she's already married, there she has a claim. Mana libiyatcha. Listen, you owe me money. And we say the chazak of guf is stronger than a chazak of mammon. So therefore, her chazak is stronger than the husband's chazak that he has the money. And therefore, the husband has to bring proof. If he can't bring proof that the mum happened before the erusin, he has to pay up the ksuba. That's how Rav Ashi learns. That's more Esva Rav Achabrei Rav Abila Rav Ashi. What Rav Meir b'mum? We have a call. Even though Rav Meir says this difference in the Mishnah between where it was found in the father's house or her husband's house. And by the way, husband's house means if they're married, even if sometimes the son-in-law they're living at the father-in-law's house. That happens, right? They get married, still it's considered the husband's rishus because they're married. So this kasha was asked, if it's a mum that could have happened from her father's house, it was likely it could have happened there. The father has to bring proof, even though she's married already. Why? If she's married already, she's making the claim. When she's married, she gets the ksuba. So if Rav Ashi makes a difference between mana la'aba b'yadcha, in the first case where there's only betrothal, so my father's making the claim, but I have the chazaka not so strong. The father has to bring proof. In the seifa, the second part of the Mishnah where she's married already, her claim is you owe me money, and I have a chazaka guf. You have the money, but I have a chazaka which is stronger. So why, if that's the case, still, why do you say that that the father has to bring proof? She has a stronger proof. What's the difference if it's what kind of a mumman is? He's moda by mumman or ruilavima that it's possible it came from the father's house. We're assuming all kinds of six fingers, but they're born that way. Nobody grows one afterwards. So here we know this is a natural thing. It's going to be as she has an extra finger. So in a case like that, so then we say it's incumbent on the father to bring proof, not the husband, because she has an extra finger. You can't say, well, it just happened she grew the extra finger after the erusin, to put another ring on there or something. You can't say that. Then the father has to bring proof. Says more, you say it's my raya, what kind of a proof is going to bring? Of course it happened before. It says my siraya to Rav and Afayasu. He has the proof that the father would bring is the husband saw it. When he gave her the ring and he put it on her finger, he saw there were 6 fingers there, right? So if he agreed to it, he agreed. That's not a mum that a person can't live with. We're going to talk about tomorrow about mum that people can't live with, that are just very difficult to live with. This is not something. So that's what we're talking about. That's a different case. And that's, again, a case of something which was obvious and he accepted it, and it's not something that's difficult to live with. That's a special case. So here we have these different opinions. Amar Rabbi Shmuel. Yehuda says the name is Shmuel. Again, this is a common thing you always have. Yehuda was a Talmud of Shmuel, but we're going to have a debate about what he said. Rabbi Shmuel says the following thing. Listen to this case, a different case. A machlok para b'chamor. One person number 1 has a cow, and the person number 2 has a chamor. And they decide to exchange one for the other. Chalipin, right? So what happens? Umashach bal chamor sapara. The person who owned the donkey, who owned the chamor, he made a mashich on the part. He made a kinyan, and at that point, who gets the chamor is automatically transferred into the hands of the Baal HaPara, the one who owned the cow before. The Baal HaChamor is pulling the para, he acquires the para, and at the same split second, the chamor goes to the chamor goes to the Baal HaPara. There's the one who owned the donkey before. The Baal HaChamor wants to acquire the cow, and the owner of the cow wants to acquire the chamor. But even though he acquired it at that point, the Balapara, the owner of the cow who acquired the donkey, he didn't get a chance to actually take physical, take possession of the chamor. The chamor died. By the time he got the chamor died. Of course, here's the question: when did the chamor die? If the chamor died before the Bala chamor pulled the para, so then deals off. I exchanged the para. I wanted the para. You wanted the chamor. And the guy who was supposed to get the chamor says, hey, the chamor died before you pulled my part, and deals off. So the Gemara says, al bala chamor, Shmuel says, al bala chamor lavi raya shoya chamoro kayim b'shas meshichas para. So this is what Shmuel says apparently. We'll see this change later on. The onus is on the bala chamor to prove that the chamor was still alive when the other guy took the para. Now, the tana tuna kala, and he says, you know what? A proof, Shmuel says, a proof to this is the case of kala, our Mishnah. Whoa. Now, don't compare the woman to the cow and all that, right? But she had a cow, right? Tana tuna kala. Yours are from our case of kala. Now, which kala? What are we speaking about over here? Here, the guy who acquired the para, right, who was acquiring the para, the bala chamor, he got his para at that point. So at this point, the chamor is in the rishus of the guy who originally owned the cow, right? And yet we say, no, who has to bring proof? The owner of the original owner of the chamor, who already pulled the para, he has to bring proof that the time that he pulled the para, the chamor was still alive. And the proof is the case from Kala of our Mishnah. Hey, Kala, which case in the Mishnah we talking about? Yeah.
The bala para is making a mashicha.
He didn't make a mashicha on the chamor yet. The bala chamor pulled the para, he acquired the para, and at that point his chamor went over to the other guy. But by the time the other guy saw the chamor, it was dead. So he says, so the guy who was supposed to get the chamor says, it was dead before. There's no deal. Deal's off. You can't have my para because at the time.
So
why does the bala chamor have to bring proof, right? That's what I'm saying. That's what we're saying. Okay. So that's exactly. So here's the issue. So hey, Kal, which case are we speaking of? We're talking about the first part of the Mishnah, the Kala B'Veisavia, right? She was still in her father's house, right? It was a betrothal already. And what happens? We said, okay, the father has to bring proof that the accident, the blemish that took place afterwards. How can you compare the two cases? There, the father has to bring proof that the mum happened subsequent to the betrothal because he's trying to get the ksuba. He says, you owe me for the ksuba. You're upset now with the thing. It happened in your possession. You owe me the ksuba. That's motzi mechavel v'raya. There he has to bring proof. But over here, why should the bala chamor? I think that's what you're asking over here. Why should the bala chamor have to bring proof that it was alive? He says, look, I got my para. You think the chamor died before? You bring proof that it died before. It's in your possession now. The chamor is yours, right? I pulled the para. The chamor is yours. So why should you have to bring proof? What kind of proof is that from the first case? In the case of the Mishnah, the father is bringing a proof because he wants to get the ksuba. Motzi mechavel v'raya, so he has to bring proof. But over here, he's trying to bring a proof simply to keep things the way they are. The bala chamor got the para. He pulled the para. He just wants to keep his para. It's not motzi mechavel. Amarbaba kal beis chamia. Let's look at the second case. Maybe it means chal in the father-in-law's house. What do we say over there in the father-in-law's house? Meaning she's married already. Beis chamia in the husband's house, basically, right where he made the nisuin already. And what do we say there? That the husband has to bring, if it was that case, the husband claims blemish in the mekach toes, he has to bring proof that the blemish happened before. Vakatilam is still not the same. There, the husband has to bring proof. Why? Because the chazaka of the father was that the girl was okay. She was born that way. We're not talking about 6 fingers or something like that. We're talking about she was born okay, and she has a chazaka of guf. So here, the Baal has to bring proof. To knock off that chazaka, to say no, even though she was born okay, but I'm going to bring proof that the blemish happened before the erisin. Here, just the opposite. The bala chamor has the chazaka on his side. Think about it. The chamor was alive, right, from the time that he was born. When did it die? He's a chazaka presumption that it was alive as late as possible. So the chazaka is on the bala chamor side. Why should the bala chamor have to bring proof for anything? He has a chazaka on his side. Why does he have to bring proof? There, the husband has to bring proof because it goes against the chazaka of the father, saying that the girl was okay till now. Here, the chazaka is on the bala chamor side. Rashi says, the chazaka of guf says that the animal was alive. He has to be why should the bala chamor have to bring a proof? I think this is what the bala chamor. No. The bala chamor, the bala chamor made the mashiach on the para. Correct. Yeah.
The bala para did not. right? He did nothing.
Did nothing, right?
Even though I would have thought that he also has to make a machine.
No. That's the Khalifa. The way Khalifa works is if I take your pen, you get the chametz.
But in essence, the Bala Chamor is doing for both people. He's making here the Kenyan.
That's right. That's right.
So therefore, I would say he has to establish both facts.
Okay, but the point is, he doesn't, because once he pulled the par's in his rishus.
Correct.
Who's making the claim now? The other guy, the owner of the para, saying at that moment, the deal is done. The Khalifa is done.
Right.
Family done. So now the Baal Par says, I didn't get a chamor. What do you mean?
But the Baal Chamor did it for both. He's representing
okay.
both parties.
That's a nice thing, but that's not Motzi Mechavel Baraya. Why? In other words, the Baal Par is the one who's trying to get his chamor now. The Baal Chamor is happy. I got my para, right? He made a Mashiach par. Now the Baal Par is saying, where's my chamor? He's the one who's being Motzi. It's done already. The deal is done, because that's the Khalifa.
But this is a unique situation. He's making for both.
That's right. Not for both. The way Khalifa works is that as soon as I get mine, you get the other one. You're right. It is making it for both, but so what? So he's making the king for both, but he has nothing to prove. He has nothing to prove. He says, I made the Khalifa for both. Yeah, I got it. Now we're done. Let's go home. I go home with my para. You take the chamor. Oh, time you found the chamor, by the time you woke up and went to find the chamor, it was dead. It happened afterwards, not before. You want to say you want the money, you should prove it. So why should the Baal Chamor have to prove it? Where do you have a roof to prove this? I'll tell you what the proof is. I'll tell you this. The Kala is really in her father's house, like we said before. So he said if it's in her father's house, right? So that's different, because the father's then trying to take money. That's different. He has to bring proof, because the father's trying to get the ksuba. That's Motzi Mechavel Baraya. That's why the father has to bring proof. Here, the Baal Chamor is not trying to get it. Baal Chamor is happy. He says, I got my par, I'm out of here. You want your chamor? Go prove something. Here we're talking about the common father's house with kedushin. What do we mean by that? What happened over here? There was a transaction. It was kedushin, right? So the father for this young girl took the money. He got a diamond ring, right? The husband now says, I want my diamond ring back. It's not simply that the father has to bring proof. The father has to bring proof that in order to get the ksuba, that's motzim chavero. No, here we're talking about the father wants to keep the diamond ring. That's what we're talking about. That's the comparison. Just like the Baal Chamor wants to keep, what does the Baal Chamor want to keep? His para, right? He wants to keep his. We're not saying he has to bring proof that the chamor died later on in terms of the chamor. He wants to keep his para. The proof is from the Mishnah. That's what we said. The proof is like Kalman Beis Mil, the Kedushin, meaning he wants to keep the diamond ring. I'm making it a diamond ring. It could be a Shava Pruta too, but he wants to keep the Kedushin. That's what I mean. V'lo tema, don't say I leave it the Mandamer Kedushin, lav l'tibunas. Don't say this goes according to the Mandamer holds that Kedushin is not unreturnable. Right? They say it's not unreturnable. Kedushin. Let's say you make a Kedushin. Let me give an example. A man betroths a girl, gives her a diamond ring. A second later, under the chuppah, he collapses and dies. Who gets to keep the ring? So there's some machlokas. So don't say it's the one who says, no, Kedushin is not unreturnable. It's not unreturnable, meaning it's returnable. It's returnable. So it's returnable. So therefore, the father's claiming, what? What is the father's claim? That the blemish happened after the Erusin, so he can keep the ring. No, don't say it's only according to him that it's not returnable. Even if you say that, like one who holds that Kedushin is unreturnable, meaning if the husband died under the chuppah after he gave her, the ring, she gets to keep it, right? In other words, this is that's a regular. If it was regular kedushin, and they walked away after the chuppah. He broke the glass, ruptured his foot, bled to death, and walked away. Right? Even if you say in that case she gets to keep it, it was a good kedushin. Eidim were there, the rabbi was there, they were all there, everything's good. But over here, the whole thing was a suffix, right? Because we're saying it wasn't really good kedushin; it was a mekach dos, right? I didn't think that she had a blemish, right? So therefore, it's returnable. So that's the comparison. So the comparison is that just like in a mission, we see that the father is trying to keep the ring, right? And he has to bring proof. So here also the chamor has to keep the ring. Meisvei. Now we have a kasha. Meisvei. Machat shenimsis b'over besikas. Let's say you find, we had this in Chulin. Let's say you find a pin, a needle in the thick wall of the second stomach of an animal. Mitzad but if it's only protruding from one side, you remember this in Chulin, then it's kosher because it's not a mortal wound, so it's not a treifa. Mishneit son, if it went through both sides, went through both walls, as you could see it on both sides, the thing, then it's a treifa, and the animal's treif, and it's not kosher, right? You can't. Nimsa alav kortzadam. If you found on the needle, you found a drop of blood, you know that it was before shchita. If there was a drop of blood there, meaning the moment was there before shchita, so the shchita is no good, and the animal's treifa. Lo nimsa kortam. If there was no drop of blood there, if there was no blood on it, the animal stops bleeding. You know that after death, right? Post-mortem, they stop bleeding. The part doesn't pump anymore. So if there's no blood on the needle, then the mum happened after shchita. Somehow the needle got there after shchita, and then the animal's kosher, right? Because it was kosher. Hugla piyamaka. Let's say where the wound is, it's crusted over. You can just crust it over. Then you can tell, what does a crusted over prove? It's been there for a while, right? That the blood is crusted over. Then it happened 3 days before shchita. What happened in those days? A farmer would bring a cow to the market and sell it to the butcher, the tabach, right? Sell it to the butcher. So if you could tell that the wound had crusted blood on it, so it was old, and therefore, where did it happen? It happened in the rishus of the farmer before he sold it to when the butcher bought it, he shechted it right away. If there's no crusted, the wound is not crusted, then it's not clear. Whoever's trying to get the money. Now, if the butcher paid for it already, boy lasuye raya umapik. So if the tabach paid for it, if the butcher paid for it, and it's a suffix, when did the mum happen? Did it happen in the farmer's possession or after the butcher got it? So now we're not sure. If he paid for it already, he has to bring a raya, umapik, he has to bring proof. It's pretty hard to bring proof, right? But he has to bring proof, otherwise must have been raya. V'amai, Baal Behemelites, right? According to this svar that Shmuel just said, that the Bala Chamor, he has to bring the proof, right, to keep it. But my Bala Behema, the owner of the animal, the farmer, Laisi Raya Venukum, let him bring a proof to keep the money, like we're saying here. So the Gemara said, it's speaking of where the farmer didn't pay. The farmer didn't pay yet. So I'm not the farmer, the butcher. The butcher didn't pay for it. So if the butcher didn't pay for it, who's looking to get the money? The farmer who sold it to him. So it's the farmer. So my piska, how is that definite? You know, how could you be sure? In other words, you're saying a Motzah Mechavai. Don't say Motzah. You're trying to say here, according to Shmuel, that who has to bring proof? The farmer, right? The farmer who sold the animal, he has to bring proof, right? And you say it because Motzah Mechavai Raya. Well, how do you know? It depends who paid the money. If the butcher paid the money, then he's the one who's Motzah Mechavero. If the butcher did not pay, then it's the other one has to pay. If you're trying to say like Shmuel that it's always the farmer to show that why do you say Motzah Mechavero Raya? You should say it's always the farmer, right? So it's a below you of Tafladami. So my piska, how can you say that? How can you say that you're making it as an assertion that it's definite? My piska says Rashi, my comment, if you hold that the proof is always on the owner of the animal, right? Like we said, the owner of the father, the owner of the chamor. So whether he's motzi or whether he's mamid, whether even to keep the money or whether he's motzi, it should be the same thing. So you can't say that's the case. Eliki also Rav Meir Shapiro says, you know what? We had the same before. We'll have it again in Daf Hayomi. Rami Bar Yecheskel and Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda were brothers. They were both the sons of Yecheskel. And Rami Bar Yecheskel came and said, "Don't think that these rules that my brother Yehuda enumerated, that he made in the name of Shmuel Hakim Shmuel Koshen Nolet Safek Beshusa Olav Araya. That's not the case at all. Where the suffix was, in other words, what Shmuel said before that the Balach Mor spring proof is not the case. It all depends on where the suffix was no lot. Now, in our case, in the case that Shmuel is talking about, where the owner of the Chamor pulled the para, at that point, who owns the Chamor? As we said, the Chamor is owned now by the Baal Para, right? The Baal Para, he owns it. So the suffix was in his reshus. He has to bring proof with Motzah Mechavel Varaya. That's what Shmuel really said. Kol Shal Suffix Reshus Olav Varaya. The Tana Tuna Kala. And you have proof from Kala that the one who's trying to get the money, right? Like the father, he's trying to get the money, he has to bring a proof. Meisvei. What about the kasha now from the same case of the needle in the stomach? Meisvei Machachim says, well, with basic kosos, right? We say over there that if it's a suffix, you don't know where it's in the farmer's reshus or another reshus. We say that Motzah Mechavel Varaya. If the butcher didn't pay for it yet, right? Baal behema boy, let's say you're right. He's been proof for mapik. Why? Sveika b'shus tabach sell. Where was the suffix after the butcher butchered it? After he shechted it, that's where the suffix arose. So if the suffix arose there, according to Rav Meir Cheskel's version of what Shmuel said, you have the one who the suffix arose in his rishus. He has to bring the proof. Rishus tabach sell. The answer is the of Chavadami. Let's speak where the butcher paid for it. Okay, but again, Umay Piska, why is that different? Does the butcher always pay for it? But if you're saying, you said a Motzei Mechavel Varaya, according to what Shmuel's saying now, it's not that the one who has to keep the money is in his rishus, but whether he's trying to get the money. So why do you say over here, if you say Motzei Mechavel Varaya, why do you say Motzei Mechavel Varaya? According to what Shmuel said, wherever the suffix arose, in whichever rishus it arose, he's got to bring the proof. So the suffix arose in the butcher's possession, he has to bring the proof. So why do you say over here, Motzei Mechavel Varaya? If the tabach didn't pay for it, then who's the Motzei Mechavero? The Baal Behema, the farmer. So he has to bring proof. So he has to bring proof. So why he has to bring proof? It's Motzei Mechavel Varaya. But why? The suffix arose in the tabach's rishus. He should have to bring the proof even if he didn't pay for it. The answer is okay. The tabach paid for it. By Piska, how do you know? Does the tabach always pay for it before the farmer gives it to him? He says, yes, that's what he's showing you. The farmer never pays until he gets cash. If you try to collect later on, it doesn't work. So that's what he means over here. Even though he says Motzei Mechavel Varaya, we really mean to say that the tabach has to bring the proof. Right? Because we're speaking about the tabach always has to pay. In other words, Shmuel's argument will say, yeah, the one who's pulling out the money has to do it, but why does he say, why don't you just say, according to Shmuel, whoever's rishus it's in, because it's always in the rishus of the butcher, because the guy would never give him the money, never give him the animal until he's dead. Rashi, 4 lines on the page, Sphere lay the Shmuel, the Kulam Asis Nechatanu, who could have to Rava, like Rava said before, Reish of a Sefer Siyata, Shemish and Nimsa, Simpim Beshuso, all of them, whoever found. The beginning of the Mishnah said if it's in the father's rishus, he has to bring proof. If it's in the husband's rishus, he has to bring proof. So it goes according to the rishus in which it is. What over here by the off tabach dami? Over here you say in that case a Motzei Mechavel Raya. Why do you say Motzei Mechavel Raya? You should say whoever rishus it was in. It was in the butcher's rishus. He has to bring proof. The answer is by the tabach. He's always the Motzei Mechavero. Last line of Rashi says, even if he didn't bring Haraya Alav, according to Shmuel, he has to bring proof. In other words, what we're saying is that in that case, we say a Motzei Mechavel Haraya, we really mean the tabach always to bring proof, even if he didn't pay for it, because it was in his rishus, except he calls him the Motzei Mechavel, because in a stam case, the tabach paid for it before he got it. The Chum said, Nachman, a person who has epilepsy and he can just drop down any time, he can collapse at any time. That's like Mumin Shabbaseser, right? Because how would the husband know about it? How would the Baal know about it? That's only if he knows, if the epileptic knows when they're about to have the attack, and then he goes and hides. He stays indoors, or in this case, she would stay indoors. But if it happened at any particular time, because then the husband should have seen it. Because if he goes out with her and he sees her, he can see when she has an attack. Let's say a husband acquired. Let's say he all of a sudden contracted some blemish. So we don't force him to divorce her. That's why it's small blemish that she wouldn't mind so much. But if it's a big one, Yehuda says noldu, meaning he contracted it now. Chia Barav says hayu, even if he had it before. Mandomer noldu, if he said that they contract now koshkin hayu. If he had the woman before and she didn't say anything, the kasavar v'kibla, if she accepted it, what's the problem? Mandomer hayu, but the one who said hayu, if he had blemishes, there she would have seen it. I will know do low. But if he contracted afterwards, maybe she wouldn't agree to that, and he would force him to divorce it. That's by small moment. Small moment, we don't force him to divorce her. But a big one, if you say no, there's a difference between a big one and a small one, because if he contracted it now, a big blemish he got, he lost his hand, he lost an eye or something like that. So then you say, okay, a small blemish, he just got a nick or he got a scar, I don't mind. A big one, I do mind. But if we're talking about blemishes that were there before, what's the difference if it's big or small? She accepted it because she saw him. The answer is by a small one, she could accept it, but by a big one, she thought she could live with it, but now she sees that she can't live with it. Some say that the next line is really part of the Mishnah. He lost an eye, nicked the other, his hand got cut off, his leg broke, probably in a manner which it can't be repaired. Loves like Shmuel that says what? Only by moment but by moment gedolim, we do force him to divorce her, to divorce her and give her a ksuba. Now, Rav Amar of Nachman like the Chacham, no, it doesn't make any difference. We don't make that difference. Says the Gemara. Rav Yochanan says the halacha over here is like Shmuel. Sounds like only over here. Except for 3 cases in different places in Shas, he always passes like Shmuel. So over here it's Mashal Yochanan only passes like Shmuel. In this case, he always passes like Shmuel except for 3 cases. I'm writing in Rabbi Yochanan. There's a machlokas what Rabbi Yochanan said. Did he always pass like Rav Shmuel except for 3 cases, or only in this particular case over here? All right, we'll pick the Mishnah tomorrow, Mitzvah. Have a good day.